just in terms of basically whenever a new Christopher Nolan movie comes out, I tend to try and catch up on the rest of his work because you can quite easily put Christopher Nolan in the same kind of category in terms of other contemporary directors today. Like, say for example, I mean, like if Paul Thomas Anderson is this generation's Martin Scorsese, yeah, if David Fincher can be considered, I don't know, like Stanley Kubrick. Christopher Nolan is probably on par with, say, I don't know, Steven Spielberg. Although, you know, Spielberg does make more popcorn flares, and to be fair, Nolan as of late has been making more popular work in terms of massive epic blockbusters. He also is in terms of his differences between him and Spielberg. The thing is that he's more of a thinking man's director. I mean, Batman Begins is more ingrained into the comic book culture, despite the fact that it is based very much in reality. Whereas if you look at The Dark Knight is a very different film. I've always described it as effectively Heat with costumes. You know, Batman and the Joker are effectively Hannah and Macaulay from Heat. It's just one's dressed as Batman and one's the Joker. I'm getting ahead of myself here. What I intend to do is just quickly go through Nolan's back catalogue. So, first of all, we have following. I only just recently bought this for the purposes of catching up with the stuff that I hadn't seen. I hadn't seen Insomnia until last week either. Following struck me because you can kind of define Nolan's work now with his work with his director of photography, Wally Pfister. Now, the main problem with Following is that it's the only movie so far that he hasn't worked with Wally Pfister. It's very well written. It does have his trademark in terms of playing with narrative and time, and whilst that works, it does seem somewhat gimmicky because it is effectively, low budget independent film. It was his calling card to make Memento, and that's on that basis it's perfectly fine, despite the fact that the film in itself is very good. It's nothing, majorly spectacular though. The main problem is that because the actors are effectively friends of the director, it doesn't hold the same weight as the rest of his work. I mean, they're non-professional actors. They're giving off this really kind of quirky but very well-written dialogue, and it just feels a bit, I don't know, heavy-handed, a bit cat-handed, so to speak. The plot itself is very, very good. Basic plotline is this gentleman he's unemployed and he's trying to be a writer. Just starts following people, just try and get information that could lead to a novel. He ends up following this one person called Cobb, and that is a name that's actually been used for Leonardo DiCaprio's character in in Inception. It transpires that Cobb is a thief. One thing leads to the other, and effectively, Bill, this unemployed man, ends up being embroiled in this crime and gets himself way too deep. You're never bored, and it's only like 70 minutes long. It's definitely Nolan's shortest film. The main problem is that this fairly decently written script and well-made movie is somewhat pissed away by the fact that the actors are completely amateurs. I mean, it's like me trying to act. I mean, I'm not an actor. I can't act for shit. That said, Following is a good movie. It is a very good movie. If you're a completist, if you're a Christopher Nolan completist, and if you're as big a fan of Christopher Nolan as I am, then it is perfectly worth your time. It was made on the weekends over the space of a year. It's amateur actors, and effectively at the end of the day, Christopher Nolan was an amateur director at the time as well. 3.5 out of 5. Next, Memento, which I think is actually more famous than The Dark Knight. I mean, this is the movie that got Christopher Nolan known. Basic setup. Gentleman is suffering from a brain disorder. He's suffering from brain damage after a robbery in his house. His wife has died in the process. He suffered from this brain damage, which eventually causes him to have short-term memory. He cannot form new memories. A gentleman by the name of John G has is responsible for the murder of his wife. The only things he has in order to formulate his strategy to get the guy who killed his wife is that he has Polaroids of people that he's known with little notes that he's written on them, and he's got tattoos with facts on them. I mean, a lot of people have accused Memento being gimmicky, and to an extent I suppose it is. The plot structure is deliberately designed not so much to be confusing, but is set out to be as fragmented as Guy Pearce's character's actual mind state at the time. There's colour scenes and there's black and white scenes, and the colour scenes are going backwards and the black and white scenes are going forwards. So effectively the end of the story is smack bang in the middle. And we start with him executing a guy that is called John G, and it turns out that it's a gentleman that he knows quite well that calls himself Teddy. Colour scenes go backwards, but we're only finding things out, you know, as the narrative goes backwards, which is rather confusing the first time you see it. But it just works brilliantly. I mean, it could be construed as gimmicky, but I don't think it is. I mean, it is necessary. It's integral for the plot to work. I mean, there is a special feature on this where you can watch it in chronological order. Now, don't bother doing that. If you're watching it in chronological order, it just kind of ruins the whole essence of the film. Memento works because of its structure. Also, I mean, in that case, I mean, you've got very, very good supporting performances from the rest of the card. The guy who plays Teddy, I cannot pronounce his name for the life of me. He plays Cypher in The Matrix, and also Carrie-Anne Moss, who plays Trinity in The Matrix, is also in there, both of which are fantastic. I mean, I didn't really rate Carrie-Anne Moss that much in The Matrix. The thing is, though, she is great in this. I mean, she is really, really good. You get the impression that she's helping Leonard, but then, you know, Cypher from The Matrix's character, you know, being Teddy, he's kind of manipulating Leonard. You think he's manipulating Leonard, but it kind of transpires that he might not be as such, but then he is, and Carrie-Anne Moss is doing exactly the same thing. The only reason that, you know, this gentleman is being able to, you know, that Leonard is being able to trust these people is because of little things that he's written notes on. I mean, if you haven't seen Memento already, what the hell are you doing? I mean, if you're a film fan and you haven't seen Memento, what are you doing? That's like saying you haven't seen The Godfather. I mean, as you can see, I'm rambling now, but I cannot say enough good things about Memento. It is, you know, arguably the best thing he's done. I don't think it personally is the best thing he's done. I think he has done some better things since, and I would wholly give it a 5 out of 5 rating. Moving on, the next film is Insomnia. Insomnia was effectively Nolan's hack for hire job. This is the first time he has worked with a major studio. It was done by Warner Brothers, I think it was. And it's also the first time he's had bona fide stars. This one has, you know, Hilary Swank, who won Oscars. You know, you've got Robin Williams, who's actually doing one of his best serious performances I've ever seen him do. And I have problems with Robin Williams doing serious performances because normally they're crap. You know, you're working with a decent director where you can get actors like Robin Williams, who is so-so and does one of the best performances of his career. Al Pacino, who I've always liked, he's kind of gotten into kind of shouty territory where he kind of holds his hands up and goes, "Rah!" I mean, I don't think Insomnia is as good as the likes of the Batman movies or even Memento, but Insomnia is a very good movie. It's a remake as well. It's the only movie that Christopher Nolan hasn't had a writing credit on. He's managed to make this bog standard story of a gentleman who was sent to Alaska to investigate the murder of a young girl, but unfortunately, you know, it's daylight 24 hours a day up that far north, and therefore he starts suffering from insomnia. But it's kind of more of a case of, it's not a who done it, but a why done it? I don't know. Right from the off, and actually, I mean, I'm not giving anything away here. I mean, it transpires that Robin Williams is the person that killed her. They detail that in the trailer. In fact, there's a line in the trailer where he goes, "You wouldn't have found me. You only know that I killed her because I told you so." Someone at Warner Brothers probably sat down there and said, "Oh, that guy who did Memento, he'd be really good for this. Let's hire him." And probably what they didn't anticipate was that he would actually deliver a film that is every bit as good as, well, maybe not as good, but is nearly as good as the rest of his work since. Some of the writing is a bit cat-candy. You kind of sit there and think that had Nolan actually had a writing credit, because one of the best things about Christopher Nolan is that he's a bloody good writer. Had he had full reign on this, it would have been, I don't know, not necessarily better, but the dialogue would have certainly been polished up. Insomnia, I'm going to have to give, I don't know, 4.5. It's not quite as good as the rest of his works. It is his hack. It's let down by the fact that it is his hack for hire job. Anyway, Insomnia, I highly recommend. Insomnia, I would give a 4.5 out of 5. If you are a fan of Christopher Nolan and you haven't sought it out, and even if you're a fan of Al Pacino, or even if you're a fan of just those sort of crime films, I would highly recommend it. It just happens to have that edge on the rest of that kind of genre, because it just delves deeper into, it's more of a character study than it is a whodunit. So yes, go seek it out. I would highly recommend it. And that ends part 1, and I will move on to the Batman and the Prestige.